Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another Tom Tested. Today we're talking about Apple chips, so I hope you're hungry. But seriously, now that Apple's released the M2 chip, what does this mean for the future of their computing? And if you're in the market for a Mac, which one should you buy? Stay tuned as we'll discuss it all, this time on Tom Tested.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and watch to the end because we'll discuss a few different things about the new Apple chips that they just released at WWDC. So maybe if you've been living under a rock and you weren't aware of the fact that Apple's been making their own silicon, aka processors now, then newsflash, this just in. They have been, and it's been blowing up the market like crazy. Studies have shown that Intel and other chip manufacturers are now years behind because of Apple's new integrated silicon that they're using inside their Macs. Apple has transitioned most of their product line over to the M1 chip. However, it's not as simple as they initially made it seem. Apple announced the M1 chip, and then they announced multiple variants of that chip. And this is where things started to get a little confusing. So here's a quick breakdown. Apple has 4 variants of the M1 chip. First, they have the M1 chip, and then they made the M1 Pro, the M1 Max, and then finally they created the M1 Ultra. Confused yet? Well, maybe you should be, because now they have the M2 chip. And this is before, like I said, all the M1 chips made it into the Macs. Currently, as of June 2022, there's only one Mac that remains with an Intel chip. It's the Mac Pro. And I guess we'll have to wait to see an additional variant of the M2 chip before they replace it in that Mac. So now there's 5 variants of Apple Silicon to choose from. Which one's right for you? Well, quick side note, I made a video about the Mac Studio that I bought last month to review it. So don't forget to check that one out. 1 month ago when I bought it with an M1 Max chip because I was trying to future-proof my Mac purchase. This now made me, of course with this new information, update my recommendation for you. So if you're in the market for a new Mac, which one should you buy? One with an M2 chip. Here's why. Apple's M2 chip has 18% more CPU performance than the M1 chip. And this is crazy, because if you use an M1 Mac, you know it's hard to make them work hard. You can't really push the performance on them unless you're doing video editing. More on that though in a little bit. A lot of students will be heading to university this fall, and if you're curious what laptop they should be using for their studies, then look no further than the brand new MacBook Air. Apple just announced that the MacBook Air is the world's best-selling laptop. The new MacBook Air has the new M2 chip in it, and I think this will be fine for about 90% of users. But you're thinking, oh, Tom, hang on. What if I want a bigger screen than the MacBook Air? Well, you could just get a bigger laptop, or you could get a bigger display. But good news is the new MacBook Air has a slightly larger display at 13.6 inches diagonally. They've also updated the graphics on the new chip, the new M2 chip. The old M1 chip only had 7 cores, and the new one now has 10 cores, so you got 3 extra cores to work with. And that will yield, with the new processor, a 35% performance increase over the other one. Nerd alert, we've hit maximum nerdization. Sorry about that. If you aren't into numbers and just want to take it from an expert that's been working with Macs for over 20 years, the M2 chip is revolutionary, and any new Mac that you buy with that chip in it will be amazing. One last note, really quick, for the pros out there, or people who might want to be considered pros. You might see the new MacBook Pro that they just released, the 13-inch model, and it has the new M2 chip in it, and you might be thinking, hey, that's for me. Well, I might just wait on that. Apple's really great at repeating things, and if we look at the iPhone, for example, iPhone 13, iPhone 14 to come soon, 15, you get the idea. I could see in the future very soon that we'll have an M2 Pro, an M2 Max, an M2 Ultra, and this is just kind of a weird update for a MacBook Pro model, especially if you look at the ports and other things. I've got these cool AR videos. You can try them out on your phone at home, and you can actually see what it's like to use the new laptops and see them in their space. But one thing you'll notice, there's actually more ports on the MacBook Air, the new MacBook Air, than there is on the MacBook Pro. So I kind of feel like you should skip that one for right now. Anyway, that wraps up my diagnostics on Apple chips and what Mac might be right for you if you're in the market for it. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button if you laughed or learned something new. And don't forget to subscribe as well, so I'll be releasing more videos so you can learn some fun things. See you next time on Tom Tested. Lots of students will be heading to the fall, lots of students will be heading to university in the fall. Shoot. And it's the world's best-selling laptop. Not the new version, the old version, but hang with me, it'll make sense in a second.